Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can add cool reveal animations to your image, which looks super sleek and are super unique. So when I refresh the page, you'd see that we have this cool noise kind of effect on this image, which is pretty cool and pretty nice. So we're going to be doing this using SVG and some of the advanced SVG elements. So this is going to be a pretty fun video. So you guys going to be learning a lot of stuff. So yeah, without any delay, let's get started and let's learn to build this cool SVG reveal image animation. Here I am in my index.html file. So we just have some basic styling we have for the body to not have any default margin stuff. We removed the default white color. We changed it a bit. We added display flex, justify corner to center, align items to center with the min height just so that everything is at the center. And then we have a container div, which is given a width of 600 pixels and a height of 400 pixels. Now let's start with the main stuff that we need for the animation. So first, what we need is an SVG. Now the SVG has a width and a height. And then inside of this, we're going to have this depth. Now this depth, you can think of it as a element wherein inside of which where you can specify some elements which you can use as a component later on. Now it's more like having like variables and stuff which you can use later in your different functions, maybe, sort of. So you can think of it something like that. So this devs has basically two stuff. First, here we define a filter and then we define a mask, which we're going to be using later. First, the filter has an ID of filter, the mask has an ID of circle. Now, what we have is the mask has a circle with this CX and CY, which is basically the center X and center Y. And then here we specify the center X as 300, center Y as 200. And then initially the radius is basically 0, which means that everything is hidden. And then we have this fill as white, and then we just give it a mask circle class. And then here we specify the filter as hash filter. Now this filter is basically this filter that we have here. So we're using this filter inside of this mask. Then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be specifying the filter. Now the filter has two steps. The first is feTurbulence, and then the second one is feDisplacementMap. The feTurbulence is basically the noise generator. So the way we generate noise is first we basically give it a type of fractal noise, and then we specify the base frequency. Now the base frequency is basically the waves that you want to have in your image. So the lesser number of, the lesser the number is, the more waves that you're going to see. So we just have 0.03 as the base frequency. And then we won't be adding only one such layer, we'd be adding multiple layers. So for having waves of multiple layers, you need this num octaves, which basically creates multiple such layers. Now the number of layers of waves that we want to have is 10. So we just specify here 10. You can specify whatever you need. And then we just export this and we just call it as noise. So we don't actually export it like the way we export in some tools like Figma. But here we just specify the result, which is basically the name of this component as noise. And then we're going to be using this noise in this feTurbulence displacement map. Now this feDisplacementMap is basically used to displace the pixels of the image or the graphics that we're going to add. So here we basically add two inputs. The first one is source graphic, and then the second one is this specific noise. Now, the first one is basically the graphic that is basically attached to this filter. Now, remember, we're using this filter in this mask, in this circle. So the graphic that we're sending in the filter is this circle. So this input one, or basically this input, is basically this circle. And then the second input is this noise that we just created above. And then what we're going to be doing is so generally what happens is every image or everything that we see has three channels, that is R, G, and B, which is basically red, green, and blue. So here we're going to be specifying the channel that we want, and that specific channel would be pushed accordingly to the different channel, axis that we have. So we have basically first we want to add the basically the displacement value of the colors or pixels pushed. So we want here the scale as 100. Now, if we have it as 0, it would mean that we won't have any waves. It won't displace any wave. But here, specify 100 means the wave would be longer in length, sort of. So you can imagine it something like this. And then we have this X channel selector and then Y channel selector. So this X channel selector, we're targeting here the R, which is basically the red. So what this means is anytime the graphic has any bright red color, it would be pushed towards right, and any dark red color would be pushed towards left, since this is happening in the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis. So similarly would have for the y-axis, but then for the y-axis the color would be different, which is green. So this is basically the filter that we have, and we're applying this filter on this mask circle. Now we're gonna take this entire mask, and here first we're gonna add an image. Now remember, everything is happening inside of the SVG and nothing is happening with the HTML element image. So this image is an element of the SVG. So here we add the image and then the href of basically the image. Now here I've just added a pixel link. Now you can add any image link that you want to have. And then here I'd basically add the mask. So here would add the mask URL of the circle that we have, and then we just add that here. We give it a width and height, and then just to maintain the aspect ratio, we're gonna have preserve aspect ratio, and then we want to have X mid. Basically, horizontally we want everything at the center, and vertically we would want everything at the center. Rest of the stuff you just slice it off. That's it. And now let's save. Now if I were to show you, let's go to the browser. So here, if I were to refresh, you won't see anything. The reason for that is because we have the radius as 0, so everything is hidden. So the way we animate it is basically we just increase the radius. So here we're gonna come here. We're gonna target the mask circle, which is basically the class given to the circle. We give it the animation of expand mask of 2 seconds with ease out forwards, and then we create the keyframes of expand mask. Now initially we would have the radius as 0, but then we'd have the radius as 400. And when I save, let's go back and let's refresh. You see this cool effect of the image. So it's pretty nice and pretty fun. Now, so hopefully you guys learned something new. So this was, I think, fairly new stuff. And if you like such content, do write in the comment. I'll be making stuff like these. So yeah, that's it for this video. The source code is in the description, so you guys can download that, play with it, and use it however you want. And yeah, if you're new to the channel, if you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure to subscribe and turn the notification bell, since I bring in cool stuff like this every week. So yeah, that's it for this video. Meet you guys in the next video. Till then, bye bye, take care, and peace.